Oh, yeah, that's where we were last week. 1, chapter 1. We went all the way back to 1. We want to look at, and I'm going to focus on one thing today, one word. I just want us to focus on one word. This word has become such a defense for so many people in the church today that we can almost not say anything to anybody because of what this word means in the church today. And what I mean by that is that this word has two meanings, and we take one of the meanings and we override everything else. So, what I want us to do is look at this word and understand this word, because if we don't understand this word, then nothing else in the Bible is going to make any difference to us, because we will be offended by everything the scriptures say, and we'll be offended by everything anybody says to us about the scriptures. And that's the word I want us to look at, the word offense. Paul says something interesting in 2 Corinthians chapter 6, beginning in verse 3. He says, giving no cause for offense in anything. Let's back up to verse 1. And working together with him, we also urge you not to receive the grace of God in vain, for he says, at the acceptable time I listened to you, and on the day of salvation I helped you. Behold, now is the acceptable time. Behold, now is the day of salvation, giving no cause for offense in anything, so that the ministry will not be discredited. I want somebody to define that word offense for me, not you. Somebody to define that word offense for me in that verse. Anybody? Stumbling? Okay. Obstacle? You have something else? Okay. Stumbling, obstacle. Okay. Those are good synonyms. What do we know from that? Tell me what the definition in your mind of those three terms, because they basically are relating to the same thing. What is it that Paul is trying to get across to us? Don't give any offense. Don't cause anybody to stumble over anything. What is he saying with that? Speak only the truth. Okay, be a good example. You know what a lot of people think that is? I can't say anything to you because I'll offend you, and then there we go. Isn't that right? Don't give offense in anything. So that means that I've got to be sweet, nice, and kind no matter what. You just murdered my family. Oh, I forgive you. You know, when Erica Kirk forgave the murderer of her husband, I became angry over that. It made me mad. You know why? Because in order for me to be forgiven, you know what I had to do? I had to first repent and then ask for it before God gave it. Is that not true? I had to first say, I am absolutely wrong in what I've done, and I absolutely need forgiveness, and will you please forgive me? Before God said, okay, right. And I'm not advocating let's hate this guy. I'm not advocating hate or murder in our heart over it. But I am saying that there is a responsibility that he owes to her has the uh, before she has the fulfilled what happens to us when I forgive. Something happens to me when I forgive you under the right context. What is that happens to me under the right context when you've done great evil against me and 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 you come to me and you say, I'm so sorry? What happens to me when I say, I accept your apology? I forgive you. There you go. Relief. Weight is lifted. There is a peace that comes upon me now. That's kind of like what happens with God, isn't it? When he sent Jesus Christ to die on the cross, and that was our sacrifice to our Father through his Son, so that we could be washed in the blood of Christ and be presented to him through this forgiveness, our desire to be forgiven. There was a weight taken off of our Father. There was. How's that so true? He doesn't want to send anybody to hell. He, he doesn't want you to go. He doesn't want you, he wants you in his family. And when you make that choice to be part of his family according to how he has designed it, then he goes, "Ooh, I'm glad you made it, Joe. I was really worried about you for a long time." And that's a fact. You ever feel like God worries about you, even today? Oh, Lord, I think he still worries about me sometimes. So I want us to look at this word offense. Those things that you said are true. But we need to understand what he's talking about. And it's the stumbling concept. In 2 Peter chapter 2, Peter is going to bring out this idea of stumbling. Okay, I think we've looked at it before here, but I can't. And it's not just the fact that I'm stumbling. It's not the fact that I accidentally caused you to stumble into a sin. You see, this offense is a purpose desire. Don't give any offense. Paul says, now, even in this, listen carefully. He says, listen carefully to me. He says, if you have a brother that thinks eating meat that's been offered to an idol is wrong, don't eat meat in front of him. Don't sit down there at the table and eat that meat, because it's going to offend your brother, who is what? Weaker. Isn't that right? Paul makes sure that we understand how we are to live our life in a Christian manner that doesn't cause others to stumble in their struggle to be a better Christian. Paul says this, follow me as I follow Christ. That's a military term that means to line up behind, to walk, to march in step with. And I said last week, I remember this because once you have some things beat into your head really hard, you don't ever forget it. Remember the little song I sang, "Look up yonder, who do you see?" Sergeant so-and-so leading me. Well, Sergeant so-and-so was a Vietnam veteran. He survived the wars, and he's teaching you how to survive the war. So you watch him, and he'll teach you. And there's a good chance that you'll survive too. That's a fact. That's a statistical fact. When you get close to real warriors, guess what happens? You become one. Out of 100 men, and I think I've said this, out of 100 men that go to battle, 92 of them are cannon fodder. 92 of them are targets. 6 of them are soldiers. 2 of them are warriors. That's a statistical fact. And the closer you get to the warrior, the greater chance of survival you have. That is a fact. If you look at the kill ratio between and I'm not talking bad about anything, please forgive me. I always get myself in trouble. You look at the statistics between the Marine Corps and the Army, you're going to see something that's very, very interesting. Many more Army boys die than Marines. Why? It's the training. It's who you stand beside. It's how you fight. It's how you think. You know, Christianity is a lot that same way. If all I'm going to do is talk to you about sweet things, and I'm a sweet guy, when the wolf comes, I'll be the first eaten. Because I don't know how to do battle. And that's what we're going to talk about later today. In 2 Peter chapter 2, we're going to see some ideas of this offense. This is what we're not supposed to do. These things, beginning in verse 17, these are springs without water, mist driven by a storm, for whom the black darkness has been reserved. For speaking out arrogant words of vanity, they entice by fleshly desires, by sensuality, those who barely escape from the ones who live in error. Now, there's an escaping taking place from people who live in error. Who do you suppose those are who are escaping? Who? We're escaping. Well, we are sinful. If we're involved in this, we are sinful. But when we escape, who's escaping? Christians are. People who have seen the difference between what this wicked person is offering them and what Jesus Christ is offering. They escape. Now he says this, they escape from the ones who live in error, promising them freedom while they themselves are slaves of corruption. For by what a man is overcome, by this he is enslaved. For if after they have escaped, that means to run away from, the defilements of the world by the knowledge of the Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, they are again entangled. You see, now, let me say this. They're running away, but then they got buddies back in the world that are dragging them back, and they're entangled. They're caught up again. You know, when I was a probation officer, the number one thing I said to every guy that came in, every man and woman that came into my office is, get rid of all your friends right now. And if I see you running around with your old buddies, I'm going to put you in jail. Well, that's harsh. Yeah, it is. Because I'll put you in jail for a week or two. If you hang out with them, they'll put you in jail for the rest of your life. Which do you want? Don't hang around your old friends. We have people that we baptized into Jesus Christ. And you know, what happened is we didn't form a relationship with them. They love to come to church. They love to listen to the minister. They love what it does to them and how they feel. But the reality is this. They're still running with bad guys out there. And you haven't befriended them well enough to hold them close to Jesus through you. That's the key. You're the body. You make them part of you, you see. Because if not, they're going to get entangled again. What's this offense that I'm talking about? This offense is the idea that my lifestyle drags this Christian into the muck and mire where I am, all the while I'm claiming to be a Christian. What's Paul talking about? The last part of that verse, I want to finish it, is this. They are again entangled in them and are overcome. The last state has become worse for them than the first. You see, that's one kind of offense. I can offend you to the point to where you are in hell with me on earth. You believe there's a hell on earth? I absolutely do. I believe there's a heaven on earth too. I'm standing in it right now with you. I believe there's a hell on earth. And I can take you to places where it is so evident that you will be scared to death. There is a hell on earth. And unless we make a sharp difference, a sharp contrast between what that is and what we are, people never see it. Now, when I say sharp, I mean sharp. I mean painfully sharp contrast. Clear and evident. You don't have any doubt if you're in the church, in the body, in heaven, on earth, or in hell on earth. You'll have no doubt. You'll be able to see it. Do you think this is a true statement? Let me ask this question. Is there more world in the church today, or is there more church in the world? Oh, you know that answer. What are you doing about it? What are you doing about it? Don't look to him. I know what he's doing about it. He beats me up regular. And I'm so glad for that. What are you doing about it? I teach a class back in Duncan that is an elderly group of people, and some of them have some infirmities. And I tell them this. And one of the elders told me I was being kind of cruel. I said, I don't care how sick you are. I don't care how many canes you have or how many walkers you have. I don't care. I don't care if you can't. We've got one guy in there named Bill. I love him to death. He's just one of the most gracious men, but he can hardly walk. We help him up out of the chair every day, and we help him down in the chair every day when it comes to class. I don't care. If your mouth is still working and you have a voice and you can see, you better be talking to somebody about Jesus Christ. Because if it's not you, who? You see, that's us. That's what the body of God is supposed to do. That's what the family of God is supposed to do. We are the feet, the hands, the eyes, the ears, and the mouth of God on this earth. And we must make a difference. And you're going to understand why when we get into the worship session today or our whatever. I want us to turn over to Matthew chapter 3 real quick, and I want us to look at this. I mean, not Matthew, Mark chapter 3. Mark chapter 3. In Mark chapter 3, something interesting is going on here. And we want to, so we've seen that the kind of offense that we think of when we read that word is that we can't say anything because we're going to offend everybody. And then nobody will be at church. And the offense that we do is bringing them, is forcing them into the world. We just can't do it. We've seen that. Now, what's Paul talking about, though? Paul's talking about a different kind of offense. He's saying this, Mark chapter 3. He entered again, verse 1, into the synagogue, and a man was there whose hand was withered. They were watching him to see if he would heal on the Sabbath so that they might accuse him. And he said to the man with withered hand, get up and come forward. And he said to them, is it lawful to do good or to do harm on the Sabbath, to save a life or kill? But they kept silent. Now, I want you to look at the next verse, and we're going to look at one word in this next verse. After looking around at them with anger. Now, this is Jesus looking at those people in the synagogue with anger. That word anger is orge. Orge. I want us to look at a definition of orge. To stretch oneself with violent passion to punish. Wow. Now, who's angry here? Who is that? Who is in verse 5? Tell me who is angry. Jesus is angry. With what kind of anger? Oh, yeah, violent, righteous anger. Listen to this definition. To stretch oneself with violent passion to punish. Righteous anger. That's exactly what it is. And he says this, grieved at their hardness of heart, he said to the man, stretch out your hand. And he stretched it out, and his hand was restored. The Pharisees went out immediately, began conspiring with the Herodians against him as to how they might destroy him. See, there's two kinds of offenses. One offense is is what we think it really is. Anything we say is going to push people away and drive them into the devil. No. Or my lifestyle is going to entice them to follow me because I got a lousy lifestyle. So they follow me into darkness. That's one of the offenses. This offense is different. Do you think Jesus knew what their response was going to be to him? He did. And what did he do? He challenged them anyway. He challenged them anyway. He stood his ground anyway. He risked his life anyway. And what's interesting is when we offend people in the world, this is interesting. The Pharisees' arch enemies were the Herodians, because they followed King Herod's concept of worshiping idols and all of the ugly stuff that he did. And yet they went out and said to the Herodians, did you see what Jesus did in there? And they all said, yeah. And they came together to find a way to destroy Jesus Christ. So my question right now is, what kind of offense do you offer? There's a third offense, actually. This offends me greatly, is for people to do nothing. That really offends me. Actually, it makes me angry. I was in Texas City, and I might have said this last week. I cannot even remember. I probably should have watched our deals so that I would know what I said. But I was in Texas City, and Richard Rogers, one of our guys that I was at School of Preaching with, he was one of our professors, was doing a whole week, what do we call that? Where he's preaching every night. Yeah, but they called it something else. Anyway, so see how, brother. So anyway, we're all down there knocking doors. I'm having a blast. I'm having an absolute blast. I love it. I've never been this nice to people in my life up to that point. And I would knock on the door and I'd say, man, you need to come. And me and this other preacher, and he'd been a preacher for like 15 years. We were walking down the sidewalk, and as we were walking, I looked up and I looked over, and there was about 5 or 6 mean looking dudes sitting on the porch of this house, and had a white picket fence around it, and there's about 5 or 6 big old bad motorcycles sitting out there in the front yard. And there was one old lady rocking, smoking a cigar on the porch. And as I was walking by, I looked over there and I said, hey, let's go invite them. And this preacher, I thought, was going to have a heart attack. He looked at me, he said, no, don't go over there, Joe, don't go over there. I said, what? Of course, he didn't know me from Adam, really. They just stuck us together. And now I look back at that and I feel really sorry for this guy. I punished him every day and I didn't even know it. And so I'm walking and I said, what? Let's go over there. And then we walked, and he didn't. He just stood on the sidewalk across the street, and I crossed the street, and as I walked up to the little gate, that I heard this guy, and I was looking at it trying to figure out how to open it, and I heard this guy say, "Don't touch that gate." I said, "What?" Peek. I walked in there. That made me mad. I walked up to him and I said, "Hey guys, how y'all doing?" And they did the big old beard, tats, all bad, dude, vest, had all that. And I said, "How y'all doing?" And I said, "I'm Joe. I'm from the Church of Christ, and I want to invite you guys to a Bible study tonight." They all just looked at me. That old lady sitting up on that porch in that squeaky little rocking chair back and forth. "And y'all are gonna go too. Every one of you need Jesus." I said, "Yeah." I turned around and I looked at that preacher across the street, and you know what made me mad? He did nothing. Let's just say this. I'm going to sacrifice myself for Jesus Christ. Now, I have nothing to worry about because I've already given my life up. Offense. Offense. Jesus offended him. What time are we done? 10, 15 after? You got that down. Matthew chapter 15. I think I did read this last time. Matthew chapter 15, Jesus speaks to, doesn't matter what he said, but he speaks to these chief priests and elders in 15:1 through 5. Oh, I'm in Mark. No wonder that looked different. 1 through 9. And he says some pretty harsh things to them. Hypocrites, and all kinds of bad stuff he says to them. Matthew 15. Did I say Matthew or Mark? Matthew 15. I was in Mark at the wrong spot, which I do a lot. And then after he said this in verse 12, the disciples came to Jesus and said to him, "Do you know that the Pharisees were offended when they heard this statement?" Is Jesus our example of how we should work and live and speak? And is he really our example? Are we really going to do what Paul said? Follow me as I follow Jesus Christ. When Jesus came to the apostles, to the disciples, first time he ever saw, he walks by and he says, "Hey, follow me." In Mark chapter 1, he says, "Follow me." Now listen to this. "Follow me, and I will make you become fishers of men." That's what he says in Mark. Follow me. That's that military term to line up behind. "And I will make you become fishers of men." What does that mean? I'll make you like me. So that when you stand in front of these Pharisees that you will meet someday, or maybe you've already met them, and maybe you've lost the first battle with them, that once you recognize how Jesus dealt with them, you'll deal with them that way. You'll stand your ground, you'll open your mouth, and you'll speak things that you won't even know are in your mind until they came out your mouth. I've been in debates with guys. I had one that met me at the church building. All the guys showed up. We were all sitting there. And we went back and forth a little bit until I decided this is enough. And then it was just every time he said something, I opened my scriptures and I went bam, 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 bam. I didn't do it ugly, mean, nasty. I was relaxed and calm because I knew one thing: Jesus is on my side, and I've got his word in front of me, and I have his spirit in me. And I will not back up or lose. And the guy just screamed at me, screamed at me. I couldn't believe it. Just screamed, loud as he could scream. And I was sitting in a chair, I've been screamed at before. By a lot better men than him, by professional screamers. Yeah, that's for fact too. FBI screamed at me one time, and they're professional at their screaming. I've had DAs scream at me. I had a DA scream at me on stand one time, and I looked at him. I said, "Well, counselor, did you lose your composure over this?" And the judge laughed, and I shouldn't have said that, but anyway, because it got worse. It didn't get any better. But he screams at me, and this is what he said: "Trump's a liar." And I said, "What? Where did that come from?" And I had just read an article out of the New York Times that said that Obama lied 24,000 times in his, that's the New York Times. That's a liberal newspaper that supported him. And he lied 24,000 times in his presidency. And I looked at the guy and I said, "You've accused me of not, of using talking points and all of this stuff." I said, "Do you read the New York Times?" He just sat there angry. I said, "I do." And then I said that. That was the end of the conversation. That was it. What am I saying? I want to clarify something. The offense that Jesus offered was not in any kind of character mannerism, was not in a personality attack. Okay? That's very important. He's not pugilistic. He's nothing like I am. He is just a guy. He is Jesus Christ, and he makes statements. Can he get angry? Yeah, he can get furiously angry. We saw that last week. But yet he's not intentionally antagonizing somebody to get them in a fight. Okay. What he's going to do is teach you how to be a better person and draw you to his Father. That's his goal. That's the number one goal that Jesus Christ has. Now, having said that, he turns around when they say, "Don't you know you offended them?" And he says, "Yeah, I do. I know I offended them, and I'm not sorry for that, because every plant, speaking of their religion, every plant that my father did not plant will be plucked up and thrown away. It's done." He is giving the prophecy that the Jewish religion is no more. And then he says, according as far as the leadership goes, they are blind, and they're leading blind people, and they're all going to fall into the pit. So the principle of walking outside the village and kicking the dust off your feet is seen in that. We're going to leave them alone. If they want to be blind and go into the pit, then they can be blind and go into the pit. I've already tried to stop them by my statement initially, saying, "You're a hypocrite. You're a liar. You're not speaking the truth of God." But you see, we don't do that. And then when somebody gets offended for whatever reason they want to be offended and run out of the church. Oh, well, let me back up. And then when we confront a brother that's in sin and he gets offended because we're trying to help him be a better person and he jumps up and runs out of the church, there's at some point we kick the dust off our feet from that person as well. That doesn't mean we give up immediately, and there's some issues that we need to deal with, that we don't have time to because it's 15 after, but there's issues in that. The reality is we have to take the position of Christ, whether that is the gentleness, holding the children on his knee, or the strength, confronting those who want to kill him. We've got to take that position and not be afraid to offend. Not be afraid to offend. Because when we become afraid to offend, we can't preach the gospel. You remember what he said in Matthew chapter 10:34? I didn't come to bring peace. I came to bring what? A sword. I came to bring a sword. And then he talks about what that sword divided. It divided families, divided everything. We've got to understand how we deal with offense. And we got to be a people that's not afraid at times, when appropriate, to offend others with the Word of God. I'm going to close with this real quick. Just talking about offense. When I was being taught by a friend of mine about Jesus Christ, he says, one day he says this, we're driving down the road, and he says, hey, we just passed your house, and he says, what would you do if I'm driving down the road and I look over and there's your house and I see your family at this end of the house and your wife and your kids are playing, having a great time, and as I drive by, I notice the other end of the house is on fire and it's just going to, combust and really consume that house real quick. He said, but I just drove by. All I had to do was pick up my microphone and key it, and I could have the fire department, which is a half a block away, there to put the fire out and save your family. But I didn't do that, Joe. What would you do? I said, Wayne, you wouldn't do that. He says, yeah, what would you do if I did? I said, I don't know. I don't know. And he says, well, your house is on fire. Your family's burning up. And you're going to hell on a grease pole if you don't change, Joe. Do you think that was offensive to me? Because I said, stop the car, I'm getting out. My friend wasn't afraid. He's my friend to this day. If he had been afraid, I'd have probably never paid attention when he spoke to me again.